and welcome to another video. This is going to be a huge pickups video, mostly because it is everything from the last half of January 2018 and the first half of February 2018. Mostly because I was away for that period, traveling internationally. I was in the United States for 3 weeks. So if you haven't been following my Twitter or haven't watched any of my older videos, that's the reason behind this long delay. But in saying that, a lot of this stuff is stuff I bought either before I left or I pre-ordered and was sent to my home whilst I was gone. So yes, like I said, there's a lot to get through. Hopefully you guys enjoy and I'll just get straight into it. First of all is some volumes of a Josei series that I've wanted to really start collecting but never really got around to it. A couple of these volumes are out of print, so the fact I was able to find this set from a local seller was a huge deal. It meant that I was able to get all of these at once for a really good price. And that is Taiko Watanabe's Kaze Hikaru, a Josei series. This is one of Shoujo Beat's longer running manga, although it is very far behind from what we have in Japan. There's 24 or 25 volumes out in English so far. From the seller, I did get the first 12, so about half of what is available in English. So Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5, Volume 6, Volume 7, Volume 8, Volume 9, Volume 10, Volume 11, and Volume 12. Now I've read the first 3 volumes of this digitally, so I am quite interested in sort of reading what we have so far. There are, like I said, 25 or 26 volumes out in English so far. In Japan, that's closer to 40, so we are very far behind. But somehow this still seems to be released, albeit slowly, so I'm crossing my fingers that hopefully this will continue to be released, even though it's not the most popular series out there. My pre-ordered manga, I have the most recent volume of Haikyuu, volume 20. Like I say, with all of these volumes, it's a great shonen sports series. Even if you're not a fan of volleyball, I think it's one you can really get into fairly easily. You don't really need to understand the sport to enjoy it, and it does have a lot to offer, despite just being a pretty typical shonen series. It's very likable, the cast is very varied, and it's just overall very fun to read. High energy and just really, really likable. Yeah, this series comes out monthly. I say it pretty much with every new volume. We've caught up quite quickly with Japan. We haven't fully caught up yet, but the fact that we are getting these monthly releases from Viz does mean that we are getting closer and closer to being pretty much at the same releases with Japan. So another 6 or 7 to go, and then we'll be waiting like the rest of the world for the newest books. Our new release is Black Butler Volume 25. I have not read any of this. This is sort of finishing up. It might be the end of the, I don't know how to quite call this arc. The Idol arc or Blood Group arc, I don't know, but it's pretty interesting. Black Butler isn't a series for everyone, but I do think it's not represented very well within the community. I think a lot of people make assumptions about it because of certain types of fans, and in my opinion the anime adaptations aren't super strong for this series. So I do recommend the manga if you're interested in sort of a somewhat campy but still intriguing Faustian gothic horror series. It's got a lot of really interesting elements to it, and I think that as really an action mystery shonen, it's very, very good. One of the stronger ones that is a little bit lesser known just because it does appeal more so to female fans than male. But yeah, it's really very good. I'm interested to see where it goes from here. I know there's a lot of plot twists and things coming up. I don't know quite how far behind Japan we are with this series, but we're fairly up to date. Yeah, getting new volumes of this is always interesting because I don't keep up to date with it via Yen's digital chapter releases. So I'm pretty behind, but it is a great series and I always like to get a new volume whenever they come out. This is a volume that I'm sure a majority of manga readers are picking up, and that is My Hero Academia Volume 11 by Kohei Horikoshi. Again, haven't read this. All of these I haven't really read yet because I did just come home today, and I don't keep up to date with these via Viz's like online chapter releases or anything like that. But very, very solid shonen superhero series. I'm glad that the anime adaptation seem to be boosting the interest in the series because it's very good. It's not reinventing anything, but again, very likable, very creative story, and it plays around with the setting very well comparatively to some of the other superhero manga and superhero set comics that are coming out right now. Yeah, just really, really fun. You can definitely see why this has gotten so popular and why it's sort of grown as the current shonen juggernaut title. It's very, very good and always a high recommendation from myself. It is the second volume of Children of the Whales, Viz's new shoujo fantasy sci-fi dystopic-esque series. It's a bit of a mix and it's very intriguing. I haven't personally had the chance to read this yet again, but the first volume really set up a very interesting dilemma. It reminded me a lot of the Kieli light novels, so if you have read those or the manga adaptation, this might appeal to you. It doesn't really sit too well in any particular genre, but it is somewhat of a familiar idea of being isolated and then discovering a larger plot or a larger world via circumstance and sort of an outsider coming in and all those sorts of things. It's very interesting with the setup, and I'm hoping that the second volume will just continue to build on the pretty solid foundation that Abi Umeda has already set for her series. Next is one of my currently favorite ongoing series, and that is Descending Stories, Volume 5. If you have not started reading the series and you're a fan of josei, I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's unlike pretty much anything else coming out right now. If you are wanting a more mature, interesting sort of story that isn't necessarily romance focused, isn't necessarily what you might expect from a josei series, this is the one for you. Volume 5 does mark the halfway point for this series. There's 10 volumes in total. And if you have not, I definitely recommend you try the anime adaptation. It's available on Crunchyroll. It is amazing. This series was one of my favorite of last year. The fact that it got licensed was just a huge shock for me personally, just because it doesn't necessarily appeal to the masses. And it is sort of a very niche topic, but I'm so glad that Kodansha has taken the risk, and I hope it's doing incredibly well for them, because I'd like to see more series like this being licensed and released in Western and English-speaking markets. It's just fantastic. I again haven't read this volume, but I know the story. I know sort of the events, and my general opinion on it is overwhelmingly positive for this series. If you're wanting to try a new josei, this and Princess Jellyfish, whilst being on the completely opposite sides of the spectrum, sort of tone-wise, do represent the variety that josei does have to offer. And hopefully that does encourage more people to try out josei, because there are some wonderful titles that we do not yet have in English. And I hope that it sort of shows publishers that it is a viable market, because yes, this is really a treasure of a series and one of my personal favorites currently being released. Yeah, fantastic. For manga, we have the most recent volume of Welcome to the Ballroom, Volume 9 by Tomo Takeuchi. Another wonderful sports manga that is just really a great entry to not only the sport, but also how this sort of manga can be written. I find that sort of typical sports manga really focuses on the teamwork and everything like that, whereas with the ballroom dancing, it is really just a singular or two-person thing. It's a different dynamic, and Takeuchi really embodies that very, very well. As someone who has personal experience with ballroom, it's spot on in regards to both the technique, form, and sort of competitiveness of the sport. And from what I understand, it is really accessible for people who don't necessarily have a background in ballroom or don't necessarily have an interest in ballroom. And hopefully it encourages people to respect dance, all sorts of dance, as an actual sport and art form, rather than just like, oh, hand waved, oh, it's not a real sport. Because really it's, yeah, I would have a large argument with that person. But again, not being able to read this myself, the last volume had some pretty interesting development. I'm hoping that this will continue on that. It's fascinating to read, and just one that I like coming back to every time there's a new volume. We're definitely getting spoiled with the great sports manga coming out currently. With anime, we have Sailor Moon Crystal Part 2 and Season 3 or Part 3. I've said this before, but I'm not really a huge nostalgic Sailor Moon fan, mostly because I was never really given the opportunity to watch it. Whilst it was of my generation, it aired before school, so I wasn't allowed to watch it because I had to get ready for school. Whereas my sister was a lot younger and had more opportunity to actually watch it on television. But I'm really enjoying the reboot, as well as visiting, really for the first time, the original Sailor Moon Classic series. It's an interesting experience because it's such a strong show, even now, sort of the messages and the characters. It's not like completely new or original, although it was sort of rejuvenating the genre at the time. It's very, very solid, and I'm enjoying it. I do like the characters, and I'm glad to finally get these parts because I'm liking the dub for this series a lot. And I find it easier for me to digest and sort of get through with the new English dub. It's just really good series. You can tell that there's a lot of love put into it, and you can understand why it's such a nostalgic series for so many people. It's just really, really, really good. It's the recent release of one of my favorite shows of last year. Last year? year before last. And that is Yuri on Ice, the limited edition. If you are wanting this edition, get on it now because it is out of print via the manufacturer. It comes with the postcard full of 3 different art cards. Yeah, I think it's, despite the controversy and sort of the warring opinions on the series, I think it's common knowledge that this series is incredibly popular, incredibly profitable, and sort of amazing in so many ways that people didn't really necessarily expect. The fact that it's within the top 5 best-selling anime series of all time in Japan really says something of the quality of the series, as well as sort of what the market was really wanting and hoping for. It's really very different, and I'm so glad that both Kubo and Sayo Yamamoto were able to realize their sort of dream series so fully. The fact that it's gotten such a huge recognition, so much so that actual international figure skaters have seen the show, promote the show, and love the show, as well as the music being played or performed to in international skating competitions. It's a phenomena that I don't necessarily think will be easy to recreate, but it's so passionate, so full of love from its creators and from its fans, that it just embodies everything that the series is trying to show and trying to give. I really think that Sayo Yamamoto has come to her genius level. I mean, I've loved her series for far longer before this series came out. Michiko and Hatchin and a woman called Fujiko Mine were really 2 of the most interesting anime series from the past couple years that I would recommend to anyone. But with Yuri on Ice, it really did bring her work to the forefront within the community. And you can argue this and that and whatever else. But the sheer fact of the matter is it's incredibly popular, and for good reason. It is deserving of the accolades, and I think a lot of people related to it in times that weren't necessarily the best for a lot of people. Regardless of sort of the outside influences, it's a very fun, very heartwarming, very fulfilling, interesting sports series that is very easy to approach as well. Again, you don't necessarily have to know anything about the sport to appreciate it. Again, I've said if you want this limited edition, hop on it because it is out of print. It was out of print 2 days ago. I know that Right Stuff put out a flyer. So it sold out from the warehouse within 10 days. So, I mean, that's not indicative of sort of the popularity. Then I don't know what it is. It's one that I think a lot of casual fans or non-anime fans were interested in as well. If you haven't given this show a try just because of sort of the phenomena behind it, or you just think it's too hyped up or whatever else, I do think you should try it for yourself. If you don't enjoy it, that's perfectly valid and fine. And if you don't agree that it's worthy of this and that and whatever else, that's fine. But it is important to recognize its influence on the community, especially currently and in this political climate, and sort of what it represents in Japan as what can be shown in anime and what anime can be. Yeah, I've talked far too long, but it is a great series. I'm looking forward to rewatching it. I know I have a lot of friends who've seen it dozens of times since it's been released. I have not seen it that many times. I've seen it 3 times. which is maybe more than some, but I'm looking forward to fully watching it in the dub. There will be issues, and I won't agree with everything in the dub, but it's one that I think is, from what I've seen of the dub, is very solid and a lot of fun. It's lighthearted, but it still has the sort of levity and weight to it in the emotional moments that it needs. And sort of perfect timing with the figure of the Olympics going on right now. If you didn't see them, I've been watching the Olympics whilst I was gone. Figure skating has been amazing. I missed the men's free programs. I was so sad, but I saw afterwards whilst I was in Auckland waiting for my plane. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really, really interesting, and I've gained a new appreciation for this sport that I didn't really understand, but always thought was really interesting. And so, yes, great series, great story, great characters, phenomenal music, and sort of original score. It's just really good. Give it a try if you haven't. See what all the fuss is about. And I'm glad to have my copy here with me at home. Another favorite of mine, although it's a very different genre. And this is one I actually got in the US whilst I was there. And that is part 3 of Hunter x Hunter 2011. Episodes 27 to 50. Yeah, I've said it before with the last parts that I got, but Hunter x Hunter, this was how I was introduced to it. It's one of my favorite series, I think. It really introduced me to Togashi's work, his writing, his characters, everything. It's a fantastic adaptation done by people who really love the franchise and understand the characters and the story and the motivation behind it. This set has double the episodes comparatively to the last 2 sets, so we're catching up a little bit quicker than maybe was previously thought. But yeah, fantastic shonen series, 148 episodes, so it's on the longer side, but it's not super long like some of the other shonen popular series. I definitely recommend it. Yeah, it's great. There's nothing really more to say about it other than that. It's one that I rewatch constantly, sort of on the occasion, and I'm still blown away with just the level of writing, of the adaptation, the animation, and the acting as well. I haven't seen any of the English dub, so I can't comment on that. But the Japanese seiyuu did a phenomenal job with this series. It's just great, and I'm so glad that Viz finally released it after years and years and years of hoping that someone would. Yeah, it's just great to finally have this in the collection. I got whilst I was in the US, being Barefoot Gen volume or movies 1 and 2. This is the film anime adaptation of the manga of the same name. If you don't know, it's sort of a autobiographical telling of surviving the Hiroshima bombings. It's fascinating and hard to watch and just very raw and real. These films are great. It's the first time being released on Blu-ray, so if you are a fan of the films or wanting to get them, this would be the way to go. Both films have the dubs with them. Discotheque or Eastern Star, whichever you want to call them, have done a great job. It's really a classic set of films, one that I think most people or everyone should see, especially if you are someone who wants more of a cultural range of film experiences. It's up there with Grave of the Fireflies. It's telling a similar set story, but in different ways. Barefoot Gen is really the story of survival and sort of dealing with the whole situation during and afterwards, whereas Grave of the Fireflies is a different sort of story. They both highlight the atrocities of the Second World War and sort of how Japanese society and everyday people had to deal with sort of what was going on, but in different ways. So if you've never watched these films, I would encourage you to, and this new set is a great opportunity to pick them up finally if you have not. Finally, for anime, this is one I bought, I think by eBay or Cash Converters, I can't remember, before I left. Arrived when I was gone, and that is the first season of Black Butler on Blu-ray. I'm selling my US copies just because they're nice and fancy and limited edition, and like I said with the manga adaptation of this, I'm not a super huge fan of the animes, but this first season is quite solid. So yeah, I got this for fairly cheap. I do like a lot of parts of this series. It's not perfect, but I do appreciate the ending they gave it, considering they didn't really expect to do follow-ups or sequels or anything else. It's fascinating, and it does have some really good moments, but I wouldn't say it's better or even comparable to the manga. It's just sort of an extra. I do like it, but really it's not like a must get for, I think, most people, but it is a good intro to the series. Like I said, I got it fairly cheap, and it is sort of replacing the US copies that I had, and yeah, I don't know, nothing really more to add to it than that. It's a pretty okay series. I find that Aniplex or A1 Pictures adaptations aren't ever my favorite when it comes to anime, but Black Butler does some really good things. It's really interesting. The music, the openings and endings are great, and it does get a lot of stuff right, so I can't complain. So yeah, it's pretty good, and it's really finishing up my Australian releases of Black Butler that I am collecting. The sort of important parts. If you've seen my last pickup videos, I picked up Book of Circus and Book of Murder from a recent sale from a local distributor, so I really have the most important parts on Blu-ray as of now. And yeah, everything that I got for these last 4 weeks, pretty much. Again, apologies for sort of a delayed pickups video, but it meant that you got double the stuff for just one video. A lot of really interesting, good things here, in my opinion. I really am excited about a lot of the stuff that I got, or pretty much all the stuff that I got. Yeah, it's an interesting time to be collecting. There's a lot of really exciting new releases. I picked up some older stuff that I've been wanting to get for ages, and yeah, just super excited for what's to come. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye till then.